Welcome to The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. I'm Annette Young, filling in for François Picard, who of course has been in Washington reporting on what has been an extraordinary election result. And as the world begins to process a Donald Trump victory, already we've started to see protests on the streets of American cities, not to mention an immediate redefining of what will be the White House's relationship with the media. And who best to discuss where that leaves us journalists and what life in Trump's America will be like. But here I am, joined in the studio by no less than the Daily Beast foreign editor, Christopher Dickey. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Rachel Donadio, New York Times correspondent. Régis Le Sommier, deputy editor at Paris Match, and Jeanette Jalil, a British broadcaster and journalist. And thanks and hello to all of you for coming in on a Friday evening to talk to us. Christopher Dickey, let me start with you. Once again, the polls and the pundits got it wrong, not to mention the media ourselves. So how much mea culpa should we indulge in?
Well, I think we should on a couple of fronts. I don't think we got out and seriously talked to enough people who were supporting Trump. I think often the media didn't want to hear what they were saying when they did talk to them. There was a tendency to go for sensational headlines about Trump rather than even to listen to some of his programs. I mean, for instance, when he presented his 10-point immigration program, it had a lot of crazy stuff in it, but it also had a few reasonable points in it. Nobody reported on them. I thought it was really interesting when he gave his victory speech, he emphasized building the infrastructure of the United States or rebuilding the infrastructure of the United States. Who couldn't get behind that as a general principle? But he almost never saw that reported, or it was a very minor report, because he himself was playing the media. He was putting out a lot of raw meat that he knew would get picked up, and it would get him a lot of publicity. So now we're in a position of, looking for some silver lining here, but it's a little like looking for a coin that somebody swallowed when it comes out the other end. It's just full of other stuff. And it's going to be very difficult to cover him in a balanced way because he's now very hostile to the press and he's not attached to facts at all. And he has people coming into his cabinet, it appears, who are hostile to science, hostile to all kinds of things that we used to think made for a modern society. So we'll see how it goes.
Rachel, it does appear that the media is now very clearly an enemy of the state.
I hope not entirely. I hope we can redeem ourselves somehow. But I do think that the polls and the pundits were, as Chris said, got a lot of things wrong. But I also think polls are based on past voting behavior. And one of the things that we saw here is that some people, especially in these crucial Rust Belt swing states, voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 and voted for Trump this time. I think that the polls, even the most conservative polls showed that Hillary Clinton would win. But what more shoe leather reporting, I think, would have done was talk to those angry, disaffected voters who felt like the things weren't going well and they wanted change. Hillary Clinton was an establishment candidate in a moment that called for change and kind of populist rebellion.
So isn't your organisation the very sort of example that you would talk about in terms of being that liberal media who should have done a better job?
They should have put a target on my forehead in the makeup room. I think that we did at the New York Times, I think, a really good job of covering this election. And I think, again, no one predicted this result. Could we have done better? Yes. Could there have been more stories about those angry voters and understanding that anger rather than seeing it as a kind of anthropological phenomenon? I think a lot of us in the media have a tendency to say, like, oh, well, those people think that. I mean, it's very hard to understand visceral anger unless you can kind of share some of that visceral anger.
But there's also the problem. I mean, it's the whole problem with populism is that populists are asking the questions that people want asked, and a lot of times the mainstream, the establishment is not listening to. But then when the populists give answers to them, they don't make any sense. It's very hard to cover someone who gives answers that don't make any sense. Mm-hmm. People voted for Trump because he was asking the questions they're asking, and he was expressing and reflecting the anger that they feel. But he has not come up with any programs.
And that's where we failed.
Answer them.
And that's where we failed. as the media, did we not, in terms of not...
you
No,
say
we pointed this
failed,
out.
But
No,
I think the LA Times carried out a number of opinion polls in which they found that Trump was ahead. And part of the reason, apparently, was because people were being asked online rather than on the phone. So they weren't so embarrassed. There's this whole phenomenon of the shy Trump voters, something we've seen in Britain, where last year in the general election, there were shy Conservative voters, which gave a very unexpected victory to the Conservatives, and then again in Brexit earlier this year. So people feel that they're going to be branded as racist or stupid if they say that they're supporting Trump, so they don't give out their opinions. And I think there was also a big criticism of journalists, that they tend to be in cities, they tend to not get out enough, particularly into the Rust Belts, because Donald Trump targeted those 4 key blue states, traditionally kind of Democrat states, blue-collar workers, who felt that the Democrats had let them down, and they turned to Trump because they felt he was giving them the answers they were looking for.
And they were being taken for granted by
That
the
strategy
Democrats.
worked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think Peter Thiel, the billionaire investor, made, who's a highly contentious person, he made, I thought, quite accurate observation. He said that the media took Trump literally but not seriously, whereas a lot of his supporters took him seriously but not literally.
Regis, you have something
That's
to...
a good quote, but I don't think Trump needs the media. I think he was elected against us, and the very fact that disaffection people have them against the media. I mean, I'm talking about the mainstream media. I think there's this phenomenon of global social network now that makes us less important than we were before. People find sources on on lots of different platforms online, and they don't need to open CNN, or they don't need to watch ABC or to read the New York Times anymore. That's not. I'm talking about in terms of opinion making. We don't have that influence that we used to have.
And that's all thanks to the digital revolution and social media.
Yes, it is. It is definitely. There's new platform. I mean, that doesn't mean that the opinion is not made, but it's most of the time made against what you find on social network are opinionated type of journalism. I won't call it all the time journalism, but people that give their opinion, and that doesn't fit with the New York Times line or other network. And quite frankly, this time around, Donald Trump was able to speak to these people, but was able to go around us, basically. He was able to go around a number of institutions that usually, traditionally make the political election. Look at Wall Street, for instance. He had his own money. He spent, I think, 10 times less than Hillary Clinton during this campaign, which is, he didn't need the media. He needed the media, but he didn't need them, their approval. He didn't need Wall Street. He didn't need his own political party, because he ran most of the time against the Republican Party. Even the Pope was against him, and guess what? He got elected, which is, another way of, we should really, I think we should, you've expressed quite clearly what maybe a number of journalists living in cities should have done. I mean, maybe leave their Twitter and stop expressing our opinion. Just do reporting.
Can I just ask?
There was so much, especially on the last leg of the campaign, where you had like 182 media that endorsed Hillary Clinton and only 2 that endorsed Donald Trump, including people that like USA Today or Variety who never endorsed anyone before. I mean, that was that we went over the top. I mean, we didn't really.
No, but
we went all.
I just want to ask you a
herd
question
against
as a
Trump.
French journalist.
Yes.
Because the next election that we're all going to be looking at is the French presidential election. Are we going to see a trifecta? And given what you've just been saying here, are you telling your journalists at Paris Match to sort of head out of Paris and head into the northern parts of the country and basically take lessons from what you've just seen in the UK and the US?
Well, it's something that I've personally I've covered campaign wars during 20 years, so I'm a reporter. I believe that the the main role of a journalist is not to give him his opinion, is to go on the field and sometimes be able to report things that you don't like, that your opinion is against. I think that the best journalism is someone, you go on the field and you don't find what you expected.
Can I also just add one point about the media, which is in the early stages of Donald Trump's campaign, the media saw him as a joke. And they gave him huge coverage because he was ratings gold dust. He was just so entertaining. They thought, haha, this is going to just keep people interested. It got their audience figures up. And they thought, oh, eventually he'll drop out. He won't make it as a Republican nominee. Then he did. And then it was right up until the end. They thought, oh, yes, Hillary Clinton will beat him. So the media actually gave him a huge amount of coverage and actually boosted his campaign.
Sure, they did. But the other thing that Régis in his very good analysis left out is the role of talk radio and people like Rush Limbaugh in the United States, who are people are driving in their cars, they're hearing Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, these guys, Alex Jones, these people are putting forth all kinds of ideas that Trump capitalized on. It's like he took their playbook and said, I'm just going to run on their platform. So they loved him and they pushed him and they pushed their listeners. And then when they push their listeners pick that up and they put it on social media and away it goes.
Now, before we go any further, let's just take a listen to what this MSNBC reporter, or rather had occurred to this MSNBC reporter, getting an earful from a Trump supporter in the last night.
Why don't you get on camera that he recruited immigrants to help him build towers so he could put them up? Oh, you don't get that on camera, right? This is what you get on camera. This is what you get on camera, right? And you edit it accordingly. You wait until they bait him, and then you edit it, right? You don't include the fact that we have an awesome president now who took a step down from unappreciative motherfuckers.
Yep, another example of a very angry Trump supporter. We're starting to get a taste of what may be ahead in terms of how he's treating the media, blaming them for protests via Twitter, failing to contact the media when he turned up to meet President Obama yesterday. This is really a new world order.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's good to give a little nudge to the media, especially in Washington. They're used to a certain kind of a way of working. Let him shake them up a little bit. It's going to be difficult for him to do without them for a very long time, although he's going to try. But also look at the narcissism of this guy. Look at that first tweet where he attacks the media. He not only blames them for inspiring these left-wing protests against him, he then says, very unfair. Well, it sounds like a 3-year-old, right? No, very unfair.
You have to give him credit for. I mean, this guy has been attacked constantly for the past 2 weeks. I'm talking about the last leg of the campaign. That was insane. I was, the only piece that I saw. I mean, one of the only ones. I must give credit to the New York Times. With this, one of their reporters went on the field and really started talking to. And he made a. What was interesting in that particular piece is that he met a lot of people that had never voted before. Mm-hmm. And that were about to vote for Trump and that were rooting for Trump. So the phenomenon was there. But the rest of the press was a pack against him. It was like there was no fair and balance. It was just hammer, hammer, hammer.
Well,
so now he's elected president. You can't blame it from going after the press for what they've done to him.
No, the problem with the press was that it understood Trump, but it didn't understand his voters.
Yeah,
that was the problem.
Yeah.
Given that he's been taking advice, Rachel, from Vladimir Putin's team, apparently, so Moscow's declaring.
Well, the Russians said it.
The Russians have said it. Do you think that you could see the creation of a Russia Today style network in the US?
I mean, look, you can argue that some of the networks Fox News is not Russia Today, but it has its line and it kind of creates certain stories, and that's helped drive the Trump voters. I mean, there was a lot of talk before Trump won the election of, even if he loses, he'll create Trump TV and then it'll lead to something else. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but I want to just also remember and remind everybody that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and that there's a very small margin in electoral college. I mean, the electoral college is really the issue here. And so the country is very divided, but yes.
This is the American rules for choosing their president is through the electoral college. So you can't changed the rule after, it was the same thing with Al Gore, except that Al Gore was probably felt more cheated than Hillary this time. I mean, there's no, she's
Well,
not
I've said
contesting.
it on François and Catherine any number of times. We're going way back. Hillary was a terrible candidate.
She was,
Yeah,
yeah.
she
She was
not the
just
right
a
candidate.
ghastly candidate.
What do you think is going to happen to the Democrat Party as a result?
I think you're going to see the Bernie elements of the party come on very strong now.
Sure.
And say, some of them will say, if only we'd had Bernie, we would have won. I don't think that's
think that's
true.
true.
I don't think that's true at all. But I think they will say, Bernie was in touch with, say, voters in Wisconsin. Bernie was in touch with those voters that Hillary was not in touch
Yes.
with at all. And that's one of the reasons that he defeated her in a lot of those states, was because he spoke to them and she didn't. She had no resonance.
She didn't campaign in the
I
North.
have to say,
She
I'm a
didn't go there.
bit wary of saying that Bernie Sanders wouldn't have won, seeing as how badly the media got it wrong where Trump was concerned. I mean, the thing about Hillary Clinton was she wasn't able to infuse people the way Trump or Sanders were able to.
Or
She was
Obama
seen as
before.
part of the establishment, and this is a big howl of rage against the elites, against the big banks and all the sort of companies that have moved their profits offshore. So that's what Trump was tapping into. That anger existed already.
I'm going to have to press the pause button, guys. We're going to have to take a short break. We'll be back with the second part of the world this week. Do stay with us here on France 24.